The conversation you are about to hear was recorded in 2020 during the height of the global pandemic. And now, Global Comedy Studios presents, Is This a Bad Time to Talk?
All right, I'm going to call my friend Jerry Minor, who I first met opening night of Second City, Detroit. Eventually, we became friends when he moved to Chicago and became part of Second City Chicago. Jerry has been on SNL. He has been on Mr. Show, Lucky Louie, Carpoolers. He's amazing improviser, actor, human being. And I'm going to give him a call, and we're going to chat for a little bit on this June 19th, 2020, Friday. Here we go. Hello?
Hello.
Jerry Minor?
Yeah. Who is this?
This is Ali. Is this a bad time to talk?
I think it's as good a time as any.
AKA, I am here to listen. So today, Friday, June 19th, 2020, around 12:03 East Coast, 9:03 LA. If nothing else, you got the day and time. I want to say happy Juneteenth, Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you.
I say that to everybody, Jerry.
That's good. Yeah, I hope you do.
Nah. We had planned to talk on the 15th, so I didn't plan this on the 19th. The universe.
Hey, man, it's as good a day as any.
That's right. That's right.
Even better.
Thank you, man. So I'm right now in North Carolina in my parents' next-door neighbor's house who's away, and I'm using their home to call you. Where am I finding you right now?
I am in Solana Beach, California, which is maybe about 20 minutes north of San Diego.
Okay.
Right on the coast. Yeah.
I love it. Near the water.
I am very near the water. Yes, and I'm at my in-laws' house, who are in Chicago right now. They're in Chicago for the summer, and so I'm going to be at their house down here for the summer.
Oh, that's nice, man. That's nice. Now, what do they do in Chicago?
They spend half of the year there.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, good, man. Well, thank you for taking my call. Not everybody does. Oh, by the way, I have to remind you, this phone call is being recorded, just so you know.
I wouldn't expect anything different, Ali.
Thank you, man. And I may post it. Once I figure out how to post it. But to me, this was kind of born out of the pandemic, where I was like, it'd been a long time since I'd not performed or done anything. And I was just like, I gotta do something. I gotta make something. So one day I was looking at my phone. I was like, if somebody saw the phone, the people's names I have in my phone, they'd be like, why aren't you talking to these people? So I found an app called Tape-A-Call, and I said, let me just not let perfect get in the way of good, and let me call people and just, essentially go down memory lane in terms of like where along the way did someone lead you one way or another, or you met somebody and they told you about a Second City, or they told you like, hey, they're having an audition for this. You and I met, if I'm not mistaken, opening night of Detroit. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep, that's right.
That's right. I was in touring company at the time, Blue Co., and we just happened to be in the Detroit area, and we said, Detroit is opening up the Detroit Second City. It's their opening night. Let's go there and see the show and support them, and that's the first night we met.
That's right.
And we went to Fuddruckers. Am I right? Or we saw you at Fuddruckers.
You saw me at Fuddruckers the next day. That's right, after the show.
That's right, man. They had a pretty good thing going there, Fuddruckers, build your own burger. I don't know what happened.
I know, and I think that they are going out of business, I think. Like recently, I believe.
Jeez. So that's the first time our paths crossed. We got to know each other when you came to Chicago at Second City to be in ETC. But along the way, when you look back at your life, the landscape of your life, can you point out moments where you're like, I want to do this, or someone who said, hey, you're funny, you should do this, or people who were advocates and angels and supported you along the way up to when you and I met, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny because when you and I met, I was married. I mean, I'm married now, but I was married to a different person then. I had a stepdaughter, and I was pretty young. And you probably don't know this, I had just recently come out of a situation where I was in a really tight control. Well, I was a Jehovah's Witness, to make things simple. You know, since all of this and since the last time we talked, I've come to an understanding of my whole experience as Jehovah's Witness. I was disfellowshipped, I was kicked out, and I was shunned by my family, my mother. My father wasn't one, and so I continued to have a relationship with him. But, you know, at that point in time, I was just a few years out of coming out of that situation. So for me, when I auditioned for Detroit Second City, I was really just kind of like becoming a new person, like trying to figure out what my personality was, because I had been in this really closed off circumstance for most of my life. Up until I was in my early 20s. So I was just a few years out of that. So yeah, it was it definitely was like a big change for me of getting into that. For me, it was when I was disfellowshipped, is what they call it, from the religion. I just had to kind of find out who I was. I had to come up with a career because the people that I was working for were also in the religion. So I kind of, like, my whole life was kind of tied up with that. And I didn't have much else. So I started doing stand-up because I didn't know what else to do. The only thing I kind of knew about myself was I was kind of funny. So I would go to, like, some of the stand-up clubs around the area in Michigan, Detroit area. And, you know, when I was doing that, I was kind of not having a hard time, but I was discovering, like, who I was and what I wanted to do when I was on stage. And I was kind of gravitating more towards, like, characters and acting and trying to act out sketches. So I found a group of guys who were kind of doing the same thing. And we kind of started putting together some sketches, doing some stuff at the local comedy clubs. And not long after we started, another friend of ours that was in the Detroit comedy scene was taking classes at Second City in Chicago. She was flying from Detroit to Chicago like every weekend and taking these classes. And she's like, I want to do a show like this place that I've been taking classes from in Chicago. She brought us to Chicago. We took a trip. It's like a 4-hour drive from Chicago to Detroit, and we saw Second City, and we, like, stole everything from watching the show, made our own show in Detroit. And then a couple of years later, there was an announcement that they were going to start a Second City in Detroit, and so I auditioned for that and got in. But my road along that whole time, my road along doing comedy was a good one. I had, at that point, only a couple of friends, and people remember me from high school, and they said, oh, you're always funny. I'm like, maybe I'll just try to be funny for a little while. And so it was just kind of like a stumbling through, you know, life until I found this thing, Second City, where it's like, oh, that kind of seems what I want to do. I want to act. I like this kind of improvisational thing that they're doing, and they kind of make it up on the spot. It's not just me requiring myself to get up on stage and tell jokes. So then from then on, that was I found something that really that stuck with me, and that was acting, comedic acting, I guess you could call it.
So up to your mid-20s, you're not taking any kind of acting classes. You're not in school plays. You're not doing anything in that realm.
No, nothing. Yeah, I mean, even if I did have a desire, I don't even think I would have, like, even pursued the desire, the thought of it, because it just wasn't something that was in my in my milieu, you know, like the people that I grew up with, and, you know, they didn't become performers. You really pretty much dedicated your whole life to pursuing whatever the religion the group wanted you to. So, and being an actor, that wasn't one of those things. So yeah, I never took any acting classes or was able to be involved in theater. There was like programs when I was in high school, but I didn't do any of that. My concentration was on becoming a minister for Jehovah's Witnesses.
Interesting. Wow, it's interesting because Sam Kinison also, was a minister first before he found stand-up comedy. When you were younger, though, were there moments where you saw someone on TV or film or where you thought, oh, that looks fun, that looks interesting? Were there any glimpses or moments that might have been like a signpost?
Oh, yeah, constantly. Well, I was always being funny, laughing. I think a lot of that was due to, like, just the nature of life. I grew up in a tough neighborhood. And, life was tough. And so, being funny and making jokes and comedy was like almost like a necessity, So, yeah, I was really inspired by Saturday Night Live and watching Eddie Murphy when I was growing up and all those things. Inspired, it's like, yeah, because it was something that stuck with me. And even though at that age when I was watching it, I'd never thought that I would be able to do it. I loved it. I loved watching it. And I loved doing it in my personal life. I just never thought I could ever make it a profession until I left Jehovah's Witnesses and then I was like, hey, maybe I can do this. I was just fellowship, like, I forget what day it was, but I was kicked out of the religion, and within that week I was up on stage trying to do stand-up comedy.
When you were younger and you were being funny, was there a group of people, a small audience of friends you were making laugh?
Yes. Most definitely. My friends that I grew up with, some, a lot of them I still keep in contact with. I credit them with like shaping who I became as a comedian.
Can you name their names?
Sure. I was just talking to a friend of mine, Paul, the other day. Paul grew up down the street from me, and it was just I remember high school just being a constant laugh-a-thon. My friend Paula Sears, who now works with a lot of youth as a boxing instructor at Burston Fieldhouse in Flint, where a lot of like really good boxers, Clarissa Shields, and a lot of good boxers have come out of. He's doing that now, and I'm really proud of him. But we were just going down memory lane not too long ago. I was thinking about all the funny stuff that we used to do. Pranks. We used to pull out pranks. The things that are funny and fun to a teenage boy, and that stuff never escaped me. So I was glad I kind of held on to that.
And so, these folks, would you think, like, in a way, they were also like an ensemble to you? Like they could also hang with you in terms of doing bits and characters?
Yes. I think that was something that I gravitated toward, since I wanted to be more of an actor and not a stand-up, that you needed people to bounce things off of and to work with. I always had a group of friends, whether they were in school or whether they were kids from the neighborhood, that you do that with. I'm sure that you understand that same feeling.
Yeah, I had two friends, Scott Shalagi and Tim Cox, and we hung out a lot after school, and I would make them laugh, and do bits and characters and imitations of people. And, it's amazing to me, like, and I think Chris Rock said this, about the Columbine kids. It's like you had a friend, you had one person,
Right.
And I think people overthink, like, how many friends you need. It's like, if you got one or two, you're good. That's enough. Don't do crazy stuff.
That's true. Well, and especially kids, especially teenagers, they do overvalue the amount of friends that you have, when they look at the teenagers who are really popular and they seem like they have a lot of friends, and that seems like that's a lot of currency for younger people. And, like you know, as you get older, you you realize like, there's really only so many close friends that you can have, truly. And the quality of relationships matter more than the amount of them, probably, you know.
And when you were, I mean, and I didn't know anything about the Jehovah Witness stuff until, you know, I talked to you, and then I just started looking up videos and Wikipediaing, and I saw that. And it was something completely new to me, because when we met, I remember you had a daughter who was older, and you were married.
Mm-hmm.
So for some reason, I thought you were a lot older than me, you know,
Uh-huh.
because you were further along. But when I looked it
Sure.
up, you're actually a year younger than me. But you'd lived a lot of life, though, by that point.
Well, you know, at that point, one of the reasons why I was married at such a young age, because I was, you know, when we met, I was 21, 22. I was still at that point trying to, I guess, prove that I could be a good person in the Jehovah's Witness standard. And so a lot of them do get married at a young age because they, you know, they don't want to, quote unquote, commit fornication. And so I still had a lot of that mindset. And so that was one of the reasons why I was married at 21. You know, if I'd have had the experience that I have now, I definitely would have taken my time and getting married.
What do you think broke you out of that mindset where at some point you were like, this is not for me?
Well, getting kicked out was the biggest factor. And,
okay, they kicked you out. All right.
They did kick me out, yeah. And you know, their process for discipline, that's part of it, and it's part of what it is that a lot of the members, if they do something wrong, don't follow the rules for whatever reason, they're subject to being disfellowship, which means that your family and friends, which you're told to concentrate on only being Jehovah's Witnesses, they can't talk to you. They don't talk to you. They don't associate with you. And most witnesses will take that punishment for a certain amount of time, and then they work themselves back into the congregation somehow. So for a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, they will show up at the meetings and stuff like that, but no one will talk to them until they have done some kind of penance, and then they can work their way back into where the congregation is talking to them again. I didn't do that. I left. I decided to leave, and with that, I sacrificed the relationship with my mother, and I never talked to her again until she died last year. It went that long to where I didn't have a relationship with her.
And you said a week within leaving, you got up on stage. Who told you about open mics? Within days. How'd you find out, and what was the name of the place? And I mean, like, there's no internet back then, so you know.
Right. There was an announcement on the radio. A club was doing a talent show, and there was a local dance club. Man, you know what? If I got time, I could look it up. Which club that was? On the north side of Flint. Kind of a dinner kind of club. Kind of clubs were kind of really popular back then. And I heard on the radio that they were having a talent contest. So I showed up and went to the club before they'd open that night. Said, hey, I heard about the talent contest. When is it? It's tomorrow night, or I think it may have been later that night. And they were setting up the room. You know, the workers and the wait staff and stuff. You know, they're setting up stuff, and the DJ goes, what do you do? And I said, well, I do comedy. He's like, do something for us. And so I kind of did stand up for the staff as they were setting up. And that was my first time ever being on stage. And I was like, yeah, this is good. I can get a chance to rehearse what I'm going to say tonight. And that was my first time doing stand-up. I don't even remember how the talent show went. I didn't win. I remember that. But my early career was a lot of doing stuff like that. It was just like showing up at places until I found places that were actually doing comedy. And back then, it was kind of a boom. So there was a lot of places that were doing like a stand-up night or, you know, whatever. But until I found like a comedy clubs, I was just going from club to club and, you know, like trying to figure out like, you know, there was one night I went to a dance club and asked the DJ, hey, do you mind if I do some jokes? And he stopped the music. I got up on the dance floor with a mic, and they booed the hell out of me before I could even get a word out.
So when you got up and you did, you tested the mic for the wait staff, that was the first time you held a mic and heard your voice through a mic amplified.
Yes. Well, no. My ministry or whatever did a lot of public speaking, so I was comfortable at speaking in public and speaking into the microphone because I did a lot of that at what they don't call it the church, but I did a lot of that at the meetings. So
well,
that was something that I was comfortable with.
That's interesting that, a lot of times I think of life as like, there's a lot of sand and there's some nuggets of gold. And when you shake the sand through a colander, these nuggets of gold remain. And, maybe being able to get up with the Jehovah's Witness with a mic gave you early stage time, to some degree.
Oh, most definitely. And I'm not the only person that said that. There's other people that I've known who had the same background that I did who credit that with being an early part of like it's exactly like you said. Some things turn out to be blessings,
Mm-hmm.
That definitely did.
And I know you're a singer as well, because I still think about Destination Unknown from Second City show for anybody listening. But when did you know you could sing as well?
I don't know. It's kind of growing up. I did do that. My mother taught me how, and that was just kind of natural or whatever. I've never really refined. I wasn't in music in school though. I did do a lot of music. I should say, that I did do a lot of music in high school. So, yeah. So singing and playing instruments and stuff. All that stuff.
Okay, all right. So you're doing the open mics. You are, you're doing stand-up around town. You meet these group of people who want to try to put up a show. And then this one person's commuting back and forth, and she comes back with, here's a second, and takes you guys to Chicago. Do you remember who you saw at Second City?
Yeah, we saw, I forgot what show that was, but it would have been Colbert and Carell were in the show, Amy Sedaris.
Nikki, do you want to play a solution with me?
And I believe at that point it was, I forgot who the other people, Ruthie Rubnick, Fran Adams.
Right.
Yes, that was the cast. I forgot what show that was, but it was a really good show, and a lot of people would know a lot of those names.
Was it the Balkans?
They were all in the same cast.
And I'm going to make fun up here.
It may have been the Balkans. It may have been that show.
So you guys came down and you saw a main stage show, and you were like, this is what we want to do.
He's like, this is it. That's the kind of thing. Hadn't seen that before. It's like, it's kind of like Saturday Night Live, but they're doing it on stage, and
What?
Yeah, it completely
A monster?
made sense.
Was that the
Like, oh yeah, somebody's doing this.
Cool.
And then how did you guys start meeting and writing and performing?
Well, that same person who was taking us to took us to Chicago, got a space in Detroit, and we rented the space. We started rehearsing, and now me and a group of guys that were in that group, we had already started doing bits and stuff at comedy clubs in Detroit. That's how she got to know us, and so she's just like, you four guys come into my bigger show, and we're going to do this show at this space. So yeah, we just all got together, started rehearsing. The guys that I knew that were in the group, we continued to do things even after that show ended for a couple of years. We even did some touring and stuff like that. But we performed a lot at comedy clubs, like 4-man sketch group.
In like Second City, were you doing short sketches like blackouts and reveals, or just longer sketches?
All different kinds of stuff. Yeah, I think we were just taking like what was popular then, So SNL was on the air, and then Kids in the Hall. I think that influenced us a lot, So yeah, we were doing all kinds of stuff.
And then from there, how does the Detroit Second City audition happen?
They just announced, working with the group, they announced that they were going to open a second city in Detroit. It was the Ilitch family who had just come into ownership at that point with the Red Wings. Not long after that, they bought the Detroit Tigers, and they wanted to bring some kind of entertainment venue to Detroit, and they were kind of at the forefront of revitalizing downtown Detroit. So they had an idea of going into business with Second City. Had this historical place in Chicago, and they wanted to do the same kind of thing in Detroit. So they built a theater there and had auditions, open auditions, and a lot of local comedians came out. Everybody from my group, we all went out and we auditioned for this new thing that was happening. And obviously I was just like, oh, that was that thing I went and saw in Chicago. To me, it was just like, I guess what's the word, kismet. Like it just, like, oh my God, it's like that was that thing that I went and saw. I really wanted to do something like that, and now they're going to come to Detroit. This is crazy.
Wow. And you got hired?
I got hired, yes. There was, I don't know how many people came in audition. 1,000 people came in. This is open, The people from all around Michigan came. Even some people from out of state, which kind of they some of them actually stuck with our original cast.
Wow. And who else?
We had one guy from a guy from Canada. Our original cast. We had a guy from Canada who came over. He was living. He's from Montreal, but he was living in Windsor, and he would come over the bridge every day and perform in Detroit.
I mean, that must have been something. I mean, to all of a sudden, from that time to see that show on main stage at Second City to all of a sudden be in the main stage of Detroit, that's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. And also it was something that we were creating, so I got to just not just do what they were doing, but we had to create something that was locally ours, that had our footprint,
And who was in that cast and who directed that show?
I believe the first show that we did it's kind of multi-directed. So we had a number of people like Ann Labira came in and did part of it. This was our first show. Our first official opening, I'm not sure if the one that you came with was that, but that one was the first completely original show that we did in Detroit. Was Tom Janis directed it. But yeah, I think the one before that, Ann Libera did part of it, and Norm Holly came in and did part of it. So I don't know who would have taken credit for actually the actual first show.
And then how long did you stay in Second City, Detroit?
2 years. 2 years I was there. Almost 2 years.
I mean, that must have been a great place to get a lot of, stage time under the radar from Chicago in a way.
Yeah, and that was the only reason that, I ended up going to Chicago later on, and the only reason was because I really liked Detroit. It just wasn't getting we couldn't get people to see us, and obviously for a lot of people, Second City is a stepping stone. I wanted to go on to do more things in film, television, stuff like that. And it was just really tough to be able to do that in Detroit because there was no other business. We couldn't get scouts to come and see us. We couldn't get, anybody that wanted to stay in Detroit overnight to come and see one of our shows. So, yeah, I wanted to come to Chicago. And earlier, I think I ended up coming in 94. And maybe like a year before that, I started to really think about, what I should do and coming to Chicago and performing. So when something opened up, when there was an opening there, I took the chance and did it.
And who opened that door for you, or did you help open it yourself to get to Chicago? Because you went right into ETC, or did you go into a touring company?
I went into ETC. Well, what it was I was going to go into main stage because Tom Janis was doing that show. And he was one that suggested, he's like, you should go to Chicago. And it's like, if you're not getting, what you really want to go here, it might be time for you to move on, And I'm doing the next Mainstay show, and you can come and do it with me. So I was going to do that, and then I decided not to. But in doing that, I started to make a relationship with a lot of the management in Chicago. And so we had talked off and on, even though I didn't do that Mainstay show. It was Pinata Full of Bees. We kept in contact. So another opening came up later on. At that point, I just didn't want to. I don't. There's a lot of reasons why I didn't want to take the Mainstay show. Obviously, I should have done it, but into keeping in contact with them, once the opening came up in ETC, they wanted me to come over, so they asked me to do that. In fact, the way it happened was I wasn't working at Second City in Detroit anymore. I had quit, and I had surgery. I tore my ACL playing basketball, and so I was at home and sitting around, and I was recovering. I'd gotten better. I was walking. And Saturday Night Live was coming to Chicago to see some performers, to ask them to audition. And Andrew Alexander called me and said, "Hey, SNL's going to be here tomorrow. Do you want to come up and do the set with the cast? I'll let you do it, and they can get a look at you, because they never got to come and see you when you were in Detroit." And I said, "Yeah, I'll come up." And so I drove that night. I drove to Chicago before I made it. That afternoon he called me, and I made it there that night. I didn't make it in time to do the set, but I did make it in time to talk to everybody. And when I got there, one of the cast members from ETC decided to quit that night. And Andrew was like, "Hey, it might be good luck. Do you want to do this part?" Somebody quit, and I said, "Yeah." So yeah, that's the way it happened.
Wow, who quit?
Aaron Rhodes.
Wow. And he put you. I mean, that's pretty cool that he just put you in there and said, "Hey, you want to go into ETC?"
Well, it was something that we had been talking about. So yeah, it was a stroke of luck, but then also it had been a discussion before then. So yeah.
And who's in that cast in ETC when you come into it?
Well, at that point, it's Brian Stack, Miriam Tolan, I think Jim Zulovic, John Hildreth, and Dee Ryan.
Is Neil Flynn in that cast too, or no?
Not yet. He came after I came. Mm-hmm.
And who's directing that show?
The show I came into, I believe it was. I think it was Norm Holly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Norm was my director too in Blueco.
That's right. He was he was a touring company. I think he was at that time too. That he happened to do the ETC show, and then I think Pete Gardner did the show right after. I opened the show right after that. So Neil came in, and our company changed really soon after that. After I came in.
Now, I remember some story I heard. I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but there was, something when in the ETC green room, someone had hung some little teddy bear or something and put some note around his neck, said, "Go back to Detroit."
Go back to Detroit, you black guy. Yeah, I did it.
Detroit, you black guy. And then Stack was like, "This is outrageous. How dare anybody do this?"
He's trying to figure out who did it.
He got really upset about it, which he never gets angry,
Yeah. I did that. That was my breaking the ice to the cast. I wrote a note on a stuffed monkey and hung it in my place backstage, where I sat backstage. And I just came back and went, "Who did this? Who did this to me?"
Oh, man. And that's a great cast, man. What a great cast.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And, for me, it was kind of like, well, get ready for what I'm about to, this is the kind of stuff that I'm going to be doing when I get here. And it was well received, so that was good.
And so how long did you stay at ETC? Because you did how many shows there?
I think I did 3 shows altogether there. 3, maybe there's 4? No, 3. Yeah, I did 3. I was there for maybe 2 years, and then I went to Toronto for
after Chicago. Wow.
Yeah, after ETC. Yeah.
Oh And so that's where you and Horatio became good friends, when you were in the ETC cast together.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, before he got into the cast a little bit, but yeah, basically, yeah, we started working together a lot. So. Yeah.
And then what took you up to Toronto after? I mean, they just invited you to go up there to do the show up there?
They did. Andrew wanted some diversity in Toronto, and they'd had a few actors and stuff didn't work out, and I was just looking to do something different, and he asked me if I wanted to go up there for a while. I did, and I was kind of familiar with Toronto too. I grew up close to Canada, in Michigan, so I guess it just made sense.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
I loved it.
You got a chance, your craft and your gift gave you a chance to, see Detroit in a different way and to see Chicago and see Toronto. That's pretty cool.
Yes, definitely. For me, all of that stuff was a way, like I said, since I had this experience beforehand, it was a really good way for me to, it was like my college, That's another thing is that Jehovah's Witnesses don't encourage their children to go to college, and so I didn't until after I'd left the Jehovah's Witnesses, and even then I dropped out because I started doing comedy. So that was just a real good chance for me to see the world, to travel, to do a lot of things that I wanted to do when I was younger, and a lot of my friends, counterparts, who got to do when they were younger. That was a chance for me to do that and grow and just become an adult.
It seems like you bypassed the touring company, which there's very few people in Second City history who don't do touring company first and then go into a stage. But it seems like you got a chance to tour a little bit with Detroit, Chicago, and Toronto. Yes, and I did some touring gigs. So after I left the company in Detroit and I wasn't working on stage, I did do some touring stuff. So I got to do some of those shows, along the way, and got the experience of what it was like for the touring company. But yeah, it also being able to go to different stages also allowed me to get a little bit of that experience too. And then after Toronto, you stay there, or where do you go from there? I came back to Chicago, and for a while, I understudied my friend Jim Zulovic on Main Stage. He had come to L.A. and was pursuing some stuff there and had gotten some work, and so he was going to leave the Main Stage, and so I came in and understudied. I was going to take his place, and then I got an opportunity in L.A. For Mr. Show, the show Mr. Show, so I moved and didn't do it. Right. How did Mr. Show come about? I mean, that's, again, that's like iconic, legacy to be a part of that, a show like that. How does that happen? When I was in the cast in Detroit, Tom Janis, who was our director, when they were putting together kind of a pilot for Mr. Show, they were friends with Tom, and Tom directed some of the sketches that they had in their pilot. And they wanted to shoot something in Detroit. They just liked the way the background, they wanted to shoot a sketch, and Tom suggested they come and shoot in Detroit. He was working there, and the background looked good for what they wanted. So they flew to Detroit, and I took part in that sketch that they shot, and just kept in contact with them. From then on, Bob liked the work that I did. They both liked the work that I did in that sketch. And when I was in Toronto, by the time I got to Toronto, the show was on. It was on the air on HBO. And I happened to run into Bob, who was doing some press for the show. And I hadn't seen it. He gave me a tape of it, of like an idea of what the pilot was, but it wasn't the show. And so when I saw the show, I was blown away. And so I talked to him. I was like, I'm really impressed with the show. And he's like, I really like what you did. If you ever want to come out to L.A., let me know. I'd really like to get you back on the show. And so, yeah, after that, I did. I called him up, and he said, hey, I got a couple of sketches I want you to do. Would you audition? I did them on tape, sent it to him. He said, hey, if you come out to L.A. and do these couple of sketches, which I'm looking for somebody to do the sketch, I'll put you in for the whole season, so I can at least you'll get like a paycheck, I'll put you in something for every episode.
So I'll bake you a pie in the cast.
Wow, Odenkirk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, man. I mean,
So I made the move.
You know, I always talk about how in this business, to some degree, you need someone to throw the rope down or send the elevator down. You know, who's gone up
a lot of people.
You know.
Well, usually it's a few people. You know that. You know.
Yeah.
No man's an island.
That's right. You know, but that's interesting to me to hear. You know that Bob Odenkirk wrote the Chris Farley sketch, Motivational Speaker, but all the things he was doing as a writer and behind the scenes before he kind of came into his own on Breaking Bad and Saul. It's interesting, man. It's interesting. So, I mean, you're out in L.A. You're doing Mr. Show. You're there for a year. How does that translate to all of a sudden SNL happening?
That was something else that had been like, as you know, we have other friends through Second City that have been working there, and so a lot of times the way that works is, some of the producers or whatever, Lauren, may find out about you from your friends who are already there, and it is the same way with me. So I had a contact with a number of people that were there. Adam McKay, when I went to live in Chicago to do the ETC show, I stayed in Adam's place because he had just gotten hired for SNL. I got to know him from working in Detroit, and he came up a couple of times from Chicago. He was in the cast in Chicago and improvised with us. So he always kept in contact, and so I just kind of had a line with them at SNL, and been working with them for years and trying to maybe audition, stuff like that. And one year I was working for I think it was 99, I was working for Michael Moore for his Bravo show. And told some of my friends I was in town. I was in New York doing the work, and word got back to Lauren, and he's like, hey, why don't you come in and meet with me while you're in town? So I came in and met with him, and then he hired me to be a writer.
So you didn't audition on 8H with the 3 characters and 3 impersonations?
I did not. A couple of years before that, I was supposed to audition. I came to New York to audition for SNL. Like I said, I had a relationship with him, so people knew me, from friends that were working there. And I wasn't able to audition because I was working on another show. And so there was a contract dispute problem. So I had the opportunity to do it at some point, but I never did. And then I didn't get hired as a performer. I got hired as a writer. So.
And does the Michael Moore show happen because Tom Giannis is working on it? How does that come about?
Yeah. Again, I'm from Flint too.
Right.
So really, really early on, Adam was doing some work for Michael Moore and introduced me to him and said, hey, you should meet this other guy from Flint. He's from Flint. And so that just started a relationship, and I just, from then on, became kind of pals with Michael Moore after that because we were both from Flint.
So you get to SNL as a writer, but eventually you become a performer. How does that transition happen there?
It was kind of organically. I maybe some people still might be asking that question. That was always the thought when I met with Lauren and he hired me as a writer. He did that with the thinking that I would be a performer at some point. At that point he felt like the cast was big, and at that point there were people that hadn't left. And so by the time I got hired and came onto the show, some people had left. There was some room in the cast. So they had shot my opening to be a feature player. And so by the time the first show came around, I had this idea for a character. And I guess I just really didn't trust that anybody else could do the character, that I was doing, that I wrote. So I came to Lauren and said, hey, I really want to do this character. And he reluctantly let me do it.
Wow.
Very reluctantly.
But you had the wherewithal. Did you set up a meeting with him, or how did you go to him to say, hey, can we talk about this?
It was more Horatio. Yeah. Yeah.
Horatio.
Yeah, because I had this. Yeah, because I wrote this character for both of us, and he's like, well, you got to do it. You got to do this character. And I was just like, well, what are we going to do? He's like, well, we'll go talk to Lauren, and we'll tell him, you have to do this, because I don't trust anybody else to do it. So, yeah, that's what happened.
And you went into his office, and you guys had a meeting.
Went to his office late one night and said, hey, wrote this character, we wrote this sketch, and he's like, okay, what is it? And it's like, it's a hip-hop kind of thing. And he's like, okay, and he started thinking about other people in the cast, and Horatio says, I really think that Jerry ought to do it. And he thought about it, he frowned, he kind of shook his head, and he's like, okay.
What do you think?
Like, all right.
What do you think gave Horatio that kind of confidence to be able to go into Lauren's office at that point and be like,
I don't know.
He was just
fake
barking.
Alcohol. Mickey will be out a little bit. Okay, I'm just give him a chance. Okay, he's playing with his mama right now. Okay. Yeah. Here he is, right here. Yes, and then he's got to go potty. One of our neighbors are here. So, we'll talk to you in a minute, okay? Okay. Okay, he's going to come outside.
So that's Michelangelo.
That's Michelangelo, and his friend from next door came over to see if she wanted to play.
Oh. Do you have anybody this many years old for me to play with?
Thank you.
I would love that story. But you guys call him Mickey.
We call him Mickey, yes. And he's going through potty training right now. I just guess because like 20 years from now he'd be so embarrassed to hear this. But yeah, we're going through this potty training. Yeah.
Mickey Minor.
Mickey Minor. Mickey Mac Minor.
Mickey Mac Minor. Good stage name.
Uh-huh.
Everybody I know's got good stage names. I got, but hey, maybe in Iran I got a good stage name.
What are your children's names, if I can ask?
Yeah, sure. Ella and Olivia. Ella will be 14 this year, and Olivia will be 12 this Sunday. But enjoy this period of time. Enjoy this, because today Ella was like, you guys are awful parents. You don't let me choose my own path. It's like, because I'm taking you to a tennis clinic? I just got to be cool. I got to be like, okay. It's cool.
And how has it been with the quarantine, with having a teenager? All my friends who have teenagers has been like, just things that they just had. Yeah. Well, I mean, has she hung out with friends and stuff like that, or has that been like really?
Not really, a little bit. But I mean, I like to say, I'm a brown dude with white people problems, so it's like you're going to a tennis clinic. I mean, I would have killed for this. I'm an awful parent because I'm taking you to a tennis clinic? No, you were on your phone all night. I hate that I'm talking about this, but again,
I know.
Right now, this is just a phone call. But, I got to still figure out how to cut it together, how to post it, whatever.
Sure.
So, you're at SNL for a little bit, and after SNL, where does the next step take you?
Well, after that, I go back to LA, and the good thing for me is that I kind of established a little bit of my career. I was on Mr. Show, and I'd done a few other things before that. So I just went back and went back to what I was doing. I just kind of was starting to establish myself as a writer and a performer, so I was getting work at both things. So yeah, I just went back and started pursuing what I was doing a lot of stuff on stage. So around that time, and it really gave me the fortitude to really try to find my voice and to do things on my own, or to find out I'm not on the sketch show, but how can I still get these sketches out of here? So, I would do stuff on stage out here in LA, working out at clubs. And at one point, me and Craig Robinson came up with a bit that we ended up doing on Bill Maher, and then we ended up doing that bit years after that. We did it on a show on HBO called Sketchpad. We did it on a Comedy Central Awards show. You know, and there was just this sketch where I sing this song with him called Somebody's Fucking My Lady. And, yeah, I was able to, like, pull that off and able to do it on a number of shows. Well, we did on Cedric Entertainment, too, and not have a venue where I was performing regularly, you know. So it just gave me confidence that I didn't have to, you know, be in a cast or get cast on the show to be able to put my work out there somehow.
And how do you and Craig meet, though?
We met in Chicago at Second City. He was taking classes, I think, at that point, and was kind of involved in some other programs around Second City. And he played music, and I liked music, and so we just kind of hit it off. And then I hadn't seen him for years when I moved out to L.A., and I had this idea for this song for almost 2 years. I had this idea, and wanted to do it with somebody else who played the piano. And just heard through a mutual friend of his that he'd moved to L.A. And I'm like, oh, hey, you're here. Let's do this. I got this idea for the song. So we stayed up one night and wrote the song and did the music to it and then performed it the next day. Bill Maher happened to be in the audience. It's like, hey, I'm doing this new show on HBO. You want to do that song on the show? I'm like, yeah. So, like, within by the end of that week, we were doing the song on HBO that we'd written at the beginning of that week and performed, the next night.
Wow. That's kind of, you know, a lot of little magical moments throughout your career, you know, right place, right time.
You know, luck strikes, but you got to just put yourself out there and be available for it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the hard work, you know, opportunity meeting, you know, preparation and stuff. But, you know, so you and Craig are doing this. It's taking you to different places and such. When does, like, stuff like carpoolers happen? Is that within this time period?
Yeah, not long after that. You know, and then again, it was just like the process of audition. He came in, auditioned for it. They liked me, and then I ended up getting hired for the show.
And Carpoolers is, you know, created by Bruce McCullough from Kids in the Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So to all of a sudden, this group that kind of, you know, inspired you or informed you when you were younger, now you are being directed by one of the Kids in the Hall. Yeah,
that's right. And I've gotten to know them a lot, you know, over the years. So, like, from performing and doing a lot of live stuff. And even before then, I was a writer on the Martin Short show, right before I did Saturday Night Live. And that was a talk show, sketch show. And one of the other writers was another member, Kevin McDonald, who was a member of the Kids in the Hall. So I'd gotten to know them a lot. I performed with them sometimes, you know, doing live stuff in L.A. So at that point, by the time I did Carpoolers, I was really good friends with Bruce and Kevin, and really a lot of them, all of them.
Kevin was the first person I talked to doing this phone call podcast thing, because we become friends. Because that's kind of what started it. I was like, let me see if Kevin will talk to me, because, you know, we'd, you know, done festivals together. He taught at the Pit. You know, we just kind of, you know, became very friendly and, you know, took a lot of Ubers. And I said, hey, man, would you just, I've had this idea where I want to just call people and talk to them. And he was like, yeah, sure, of course. You know, as long as the Kids in the Hall don't fire me, but sure, yeah. That's his ongoing bit, but that's kind of what launched it. And then, you know, then that kind of gave it some kind of credibility that Kevin McDonald from Kids in the Hall talked to me. And then, you know, one thing led to another. But so the Martin Short, was that Jiminy Glick, or that was a different Martin Short show? That's
where he came up with Jiminy Glick, yeah. Different show, because the Jiminy Glick thing I think he did on Comedy Central right after that. But the Martin Short show was where he came up with that character.
And then just converted to doing that instead of a talk show.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. He said many times when we were doing that show, he's like, all I want to do is Jiminy Glick. I wish I could just do this as this character. So,
you know, after carpoolers. Where does Lucky Louie happen? Because I watched a couple of clips of Lucky Louie, which I know I guess I'd seen here and there, but I mean, it had that real classic sitcom feel. And when I saw you in it, it almost had this like golden age of television, TV land kind of feel, the character you were playing, Walter. When does that come about, and how does that happen?
So that was 2006, 2007. So that was before Carpoolers. So sometime after I'd worked for SNL a few years. Again, that was I knew Louis, from just the comedy scene, seeing him around, talking to him, become friends with him, and then I was a writer at Cedric the Entertainer Presents. It was on Fox, and he was a producer on there too. So we had gotten to know each other, and he had another pilot for CBS that I came in audition for. I didn't get that one, but he wanted me to audition for that part. I came in a couple of times. I think the first time I came in, it was really like it didn't go well. And the second time I came in, it seemed like it wasn't going well, and I was leaving, and Louis came out. I was in the parking lot. Louis came out to the parking lot and said, "Hey, do you have another take on that character? Do you want to do what you feel?" I was like, "Yeah." Came back in, did my take on the character, and he's like, "Yeah, that's it." And that one was like, I hate this for the other guy, whoever, but they had already hired another writer or another actor for that part, for that Walter part, and they ended up bringing me on. I feel bad, but for him, I feel good for myself.
But there's something. He ran out into the parking lot to find you, to come back to try. Let's
came on the parking lot and said, "Hey, yeah, because it just wasn't. They were giving me direction. It was kind of something that he wanted, and I just had a feeling of how I would play it. And from then on, he was just like, you know what, do what you want to with that character. I never changed any lines. It was just the way I played it."
And how was it different than what they wanted you to do?
I think they saw the character a little bit more. They saw him a little bit more browbeating, a little bit more stern. Like I said, we never changed any lines. It was just kind of the way he played it. Or I played him a little more. I don't even know what the word is. Like, for me, it was just real. It was just my reality of how I would be in that situation, or when I thought about the situation. Yeah, I guess it's hard to say, because they were giving me direction. It just didn't. For me, that was just things to do. It didn't make sense to the character of the way I wanted to play the character, the way I was thinking about the way he would feel and how he would react. I think was just different from the way they perceived it. It's hard to say what that was. They were telling me to do different things that I wouldn't naturally do. Those are choices that I wouldn't make.
Now, but throughout your career, you'd never taken any acting classes or anything. You just kind of developed your own way of doing this?
I'm taking a few. I've worked with some. Yeah, I have. Yeah. But maybe not like a lot of people. But as my career has gone on, I have found it necessary to be able to go to somebody and to things that I was either new to or just needed another eye, especially with auditions, because, early in my career I felt like I could do the work, but I get nervous on auditions, and sometimes that's a skill on its own that has nothing to do with the work that you're actually going to do. So those are things that I just had to learn, and being with, finding an instructor that helped.
And is that someone you can name that you can, that helped you?
Oh, yeah. I've taken classes from a few people, but basically, the latest and best person that I've worked with is the guy Robert Davanzo out of L.A. He's just a really good acting coach.
Wow. And so the show you're doing right now, For the Love of the Glove,
mm-hmm.
Is that right? That was what you were working on.
I did.
You did.
Before the pandemic, yes.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
How did that come about?
Again, it was I was kind of friends with the director, writer, and producer of the play. His name is Julian Nitzberg. He directed it's a documentary called The Wonderful World of the Whites about this family in West Virginia. It was produced by Johnny Knoxville. It got a lot of attention a few years ago. And he'd done a couple of musicals before that were really popular in L.A. They got kind of a cult following. And he wrote this musical about Michael Jackson, and a lot of it had to do with Michael Jackson's early life when he was growing up, and it had a lot of references to his family being Jehovah's Witnesses. So he had seen me. I did this special with Leah Remini a couple of years ago that focused on the Jehovah's Witnesses. She did a special. She had gotten so much mail from Jehovah's Witnesses who were saying, "Hey, you did these specials about Scientology. It's really similar to how my experience as a Jehovah's Witness." And so she did a documentary about that and did a special, and I was in it. And he saw that, and he'd known me before from the comedy community, seeing me perform live. He knew I could sing, and he just thought that it would be he just wanted me. First of all, he gave me the script and was like, "Hey, how accurate is this?" And then he asked me to be a part of the play.
Wow. So hopefully when the pandemic settles down, you'll go back to doing that.
I don't know about that. I did the run, so I remembered how hard that was, how much work that was to do it. So at the time when we closed, I was looking to get out. I still was looking to be a part of the show. So if it does come back, I may not come back as a capacity as an actor, but it's a good chance that if it does come back, I would be involved in the show somehow.
So, it seems like you've had, an amazing career. When I'm listening to it, like I've never looked you up or Wikipedia'd you or Googled you prior to asking you to chat for a bit. But, you've done, a lot of incredible things, and you've been able to be a part of a lot of, television history. If you could wave a magic wand for the next chapter for yourself, what would you put yourself in? What would be the vehicle you'd put yourself in?
I guess it really doesn't matter what the vehicle is. I just want to keep creating. And at this point now, my goals are to create in different ways. I've been learning as much as I can about directing. So I know it sounds cliche, but that's what I want to do now. So I'd really like to get into the directing side of it. So that's pretty much what I've been spending my time doing and learning for the last few years, is how to be a really good director, learn about camera, learn as much as I can about all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And even like I'm listening to you, have you ever thought of taking the story of your life, and making it into a film? Just these little stories you've told me about, like the radio announcement and going to the club and then, doing a show for the wait staff. These all seem like, they're almost filmic.
In my mind, but you may think that if I heard the details about your life, I'm sure that I could feel the same way. But maybe, yeah.
But you wouldn't, being in another sitcom is not something as alluring to you right now as directing a sitcom.
Yeah, obviously that's my work, so I've done that. But as far as like my goals to like where I want to be, that's where I want to stretch. So yeah, of course I would love to do a sitcom or anything like that. But my goals and where I'm really reaching toward is behind the camera.
Directing like either a feature or sitcom?
Either one, but I think feature is where more I'm headed, that's more creatively of what I want to do.
And is someone like Jordan Peele someone you could reach out to and talk to? Are you friends with him?
Oh yeah, all the time, yeah. And I have like a number of people who are directors who've pursued that side of it, and like me, were actors at one time. I've shadowed a few people, some of my friends. It's a good thing about being friends with a lot of people who are successful is I can always like rely on them and talk to them about stuff. We talked about Tom Janis, a mutual friend of ours who is also a director who I talk to a lot and get tips from. Adam McCaig is another one. My in-law, I have an in-law who's another Oscar, or not in-law, but in my in-law's family, a cousin, my wife's cousin is an Oscar-nominated director too, so I can talk to him. I feel like I got a lot of wealth of like people who know what they're doing, you know.
Well, I learned once from a plumber I worked with once. His father told him, borrow with your eyes. So whenever you get a chance, borrow and learn, from what other people do and by just watching how they do it.
It's the best way to learn. You know that.
Yeah. Now, would you want this thing you want to direct, this piece, would you want it to be something that you wrote or someone else wrote it and you direct it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know when I'm going to be at that point. I don't feel like I know enough yet. But yeah, I don't know yet. I don't know what would be the best thing for me to do the first time. I've directed some small things, sketches and stuff like that, in the past, and stuff that I didn't write. I guess right now for me, I guess I'm not even thinking about it as a priority. I'm just learning about the craft itself. You know what I mean?
Well, if I could wave a magic wand, I would give you, whatever project you wanted to direct if I had that kind of crazy coin. But
I know you would. You're that you're that kind of person. You would make things happen.
If I could, I mean, and that's why I'm just thinking, like, could you talk to Jordan? Maybe McKay will help you. What about Horatio directing a movie? Because I'm always
sure, yeah.
Because I guess you heard the news about I.O. Improv Olympics shutting down.
Yes. So, what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I'm in the middle of it too. I'll be lucky if I'm
right.
able to keep one of the 4 spaces we have when this is over, because landlords they're on a different page. They want to get full rent, and it's just like banks and landlords. If they don't play ball, at the end of the day, they're just businesses. So
that's right.
I've got to stay humble, and just figure out what to do. But I know for myself, like, if it weren't for this pandemic and the situation, I don't think I would have called people like you and bothered them to talk on the phone. I would have been like, they're busy. Everybody else is doing these podcast things. Why should I do it? It's too much. But because of this, I was like, I got to start doing something. And so, this is like, I talked to Kay Cannon yesterday. I've talked to Rachel Dratch and Squazy, and I'm just kind of, as I speak to people, hearing other people they mention and go, yeah, you know what, I want to track down Stack, or it would be nice to talk to Miriam, and just kind of organically going through people and, reaching out and seeing who wants to chat for a little bit, because ultimately this is for the young Jerry Minor listening to this someday,
Right, that's right.
Who may be a Jehovah's Witness, maybe in a
that's
situation, and maybe like, oh, wait a minute, that's real similar to my story. And,
exactly.
I think success leaves clues behind. So for people like me and others, they want to know, but how does this happen? How do you audition? Where did you meet this person? From the sounds of it, it's just, for you, it's just very organic. You
put yourself out there.
The Jehovah's Witness, part of your life gave you what you needed in terms of public speaking, in terms of singing, in terms of knowing what you didn't want in your life. And then days after you had made that break, the next chapter began.
Yeah, I would say, like, the lesson is, like, you don't have to have all the plans laid out and know exactly what you're doing before you start to take action. You can take small parts and actions that can lead up to a bigger answer later on. But a lot of times, I think, maybe times you get swept up in, like, well, what's the plan? What am I going to do? And is every step I'm taking, like, leading up to that plan? And that's good too. But a lot of times, I think that trying to figure out what the bigger plan is, you kind of like miss that just taking smaller steps to get somewhere, And so just by putting yourself out there, like being in a place where I could meet people who wanted to do a show and stuff like that, or just constantly performing and not knowing exactly what was going to come out, but knowing I just want to get better. It put me in a position to meet people who could give me the opportunity that I never even imagined in my mind of how that's going to be in the future. So, yeah, just being proactive.
And what would you say to a young person who may be in a similar situation that you were, caught up in a world that, they didn't want to be in?
Yeah, well, I do. I talk to people all the time who are like that. And like you said, now there is a way that you can look for encouragement by looking at other people's stories. And I'm not the only one who's come out of a situation and made that situation better for themselves. And I know a lot of people, even people that are in this business, who I've talked to too, who were in the same situation as I was and made some choices to get themselves into a position where they were happy and doing what they wanted to do. So looking at our examples, is a really good thing. It can really give you a roadmap for, especially young people in a situation like that. They can't figure out how to get out of it. There's a wealth of information out there to tell you how you might be able to navigate that, and keep your family, and be able to still see your family, but also to be able to be happy and have a fulfilling life. You just have to know about it.
Well, I thank you, man. I thank you for giving me the most valuable thing you have, which is your time and sharing your story. I've always liked you from the first time, we met, and it seemed like we, got along. And I appreciate, you're not only funny, you're a good person with a good heart. And I wish you nothing but the best and all the success in the world, because you deserve it, and I hope you find a way, to, make it happen. I have no doubt in my mind that it will all come to you, because it's all come to you, and it's unfolding the way it should, I think.
Well, right back at you. I hope that it's success, everything with the pit. If you need any help or anything like that, just let me know. I'd really like to see everything, that you're doing survive, and hopefully you can, but I'll be there to help you out, whatever you need.
Thank you, man. If I ever can be of service, please feel free to call me. And if I'm ever in LA, if I may call you, I'd appreciate that.
Keep in touch, no matter what.
Thank you.
It's good to hear you. Good to hear your voice.
Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate you, man. Thank you very much.
Be good, man. Tell your family I said hello, even though I don't know them.
and I hope to meet yours and little Mickey someday.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Take care, brother.
All right. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon.
Jerry Minor. What a good guy. Funny. Good guy. Good heart. Positive attitude. Just, the things he's done. All of it. And for a reason. Because he can bring it. He can bring it. He's funny. He's a good guy. Easy to work with. Good attitude. People like him. They like to work with him. They like to be around him. And I feel lucky that our paths crossed for a moment in time. So, yeah, I don't know why it made me emotional. But it did, and so it goes. That's life. So again, wherever this finds you, good morning, good afternoon, good night, sweet dreams. I hope it finds you healthy. If you're not healthy, I hope you get healthy. Once you get healthy, I hope you appreciate your health. Because the most important thing is health. True wealth is health. And being able to take a deep breath. That's real wealth. And no one should have to ask to take a breath. People should be allowed to breathe, and nobody should interfere with someone's breathing. But I hope we get to meet someday in the real world. Until then, take care of yourself, safe travels, and so long, and spread the word. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Global Comedy Studios. Is this a bad time to talk? Stay tuned for more.